6 things happen inside your head when you lift weights. Not in your muscles, in your brain. And every one of them has been measured. Think about the last set you finished. You racked the bar, your hands were shaking. And somewhere in the next 10 minutes, the noise in your head went quiet. You probably called it endorphins and forgot about it. The people who study this did not forget about it. 6 changes. They run from how well you focus tonight to your risk of dementia 30 years from now. The first one needs a single session a week. The fourth works even if you never get 1 rep stronger. And the 6th comes from 466,000 people. One thing before we start. If you want more of these, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it is the only signal that tells YouTube to show somebody else this video. But first, something you need to know about this research. For 40 years, almost every strength training study measured the same 3 things. Muscle size, 1 rep max body fat. The brain was somebody else's department. That changed when researchers started putting people who lift into scanners and running cognitive tests on them before and after. And now I have to be honest with you about something, because it changes how you should read everything that follows. Most of this research was done in people over 60. Not because lifting does nothing for a younger brain. Because that is where the funding is. Dementia research gets paid for. Gym performance research does not. So every time I give you a number, I will tell you who it came from and what it does not prove. Here's what they found. Number 1. Focus. In 2010, a team in Vancouver took 155 women, aged 65 to 75, and split them into 3 groups for a full year. One group lifted weights twice a week. One group lifted once a week. The third group did balance and toning work. Movement, but no meaningful load. What they measured was the Stroop test. If you have never done one, you see the word red, printed in blue ink, and you have to say the color, not the word. Your brain wants to read. You have to stop it. That fight is called executive function. It is what you use when you decide not to check your phone. When you hold a plan in your head while somebody talks at you. When you do not send the email. After 12 months, both lifting groups got better at it. The balance and toning group did not. And here is the part that should change what you do this week. Once a week was enough. 1 session, not 5, not a split, not a program. Now the honest caveat, and I am going to give you one of these every single time. These were women in their late 60s and 70s. Nobody has run this exact trial on 30-year-olds for 12 months because nobody will pay for it. What it tells you is that the machinery exists. Loading muscle changes the part of the brain that says no. It does not tell you the size of that effect at 30. Number 2. Sleep. This one I have to give you carefully because I checked the numbers and I am not confident enough in them to say them out loud. Here is what I can say. A network meta-analysis pooled 35 trials and more than 3,500 older adults, comparing different kinds of exercise against usual care and asking which one improved sleep. Resistance training came out ahead of usual care. 3 things moved. People fell asleep faster. They rated their sleep as better, and the proportion of slow-wave sleep went up. Slow-wave sleep is the deep stage. The one where growth hormone pulses and the body does its repair work. So the loop does not run one way. You lift, you sleep deeper, and deeper sleep is when the adaptation to lifting actually happens. The set is not the stimulus finishing. The set is the stimulus starting. And this is the only item on the list with a feedback loop short enough for you to check yourself. You will never notice your hippocampus. You will notice whether you fell asleep, which also makes it the easiest one to fool yourself about. What I am not going to do is give you a percentage. The effect sizes in that literature vary a lot depending on who you measure and how. A lot of it is people filling in a questionnaire about how they think they slept. If I read you a single number, it would sound more settled than it is. Number 3. Anxiety. Now the average age drops. This meta-analysis pulled 31 effects out of 16 trials. 922 people, average age 43. Half were randomized to lift, half to a control group that did not. And 31 effects out of 16 trials means some trials contributed more than one comparison. Different measures, different follow-up points. That is normal in this kind of analysis. It is also why you should not read 31 as 31 independent facts. Resistance training reduced anxiety symptoms. In healthy adults, the effect size was 0.50. In people with a diagnosed illness, 0.19. Let me translate an effect size, because the number on its own is meaningless. 0.5 means that if you picked one person from each group at random, the one who lifted would be the less anxious of the two about 64% of the time. It is not a cure. It is a real, moderate shift, which is roughly what you should expect from anything that is free, has no side effects, and does not require a prescription. And notice which way round it went. The bigger effect was in the healthy group, the people who were not anxious enough to be diagnosed. That is the opposite of how drug trials usually look, where the sicker you are, the more room there is to improve. I do not know why. Nobody in that paper knows why either. They say so. One possibility is that the diagnosed group were already on treatment, so there was less left to move. Either way, if you are a basically fine person who is wound a bit tight, this is the group where the effect was largest. Number 4, and this is the one I promised you at the start. 33 randomized controlled trials, pooled in JAMA Psychiatry in 2018. Resistance exercise training versus not, measuring depressive symptoms. The effect size was 0.66, bigger than the anxiety number. The confidence interval ran from 0.48 to 0.83, which is a long way of saying this finding is not fragile. But that is not the interesting part. The interesting part is what did not change the effect. Not age. Young, old, in between. Same benefit. Not health status. Healthy or not. Same benefit. Not how much training people did. More volume did not buy more mood. And not, and this is the one, whether they actually got stronger. Sit with that for a second. Because it takes apart the story almost everyone tells about why the gym helps. The people whose 1 rep max went up and the people whose 1 rep max did not got the same improvement. Which means the mechanism is not, I got stronger, therefore I feel better about myself. That story is intuitive, and the data does not support it. Something about the act of doing it is doing the work, independent of the result. If you have ever quit because you were not progressing, this is the finding I would want you to have. Number 5, the hippocampus. Everything so far has been how you feel and how you perform. This one is structural, the tissue itself. The trial is called SMART. The people in it had mild cognitive impairment, the stage before dementia, where memory is measurably worse than it should be, but you are still running your own life. They did 6 months of progressive resistance training. Then the researchers scanned their brains and kept scanning for 18 months. The word progressive is doing a lot of work in that sentence. This was not a gentle mobility class. It was load, and the load went up over the 6 months. The hippocampus is not one thing. It has subregions, and Alzheimer's does not attack them evenly. It starts in specific ones. A region called CA1, the subiculum, and the dentate gyrus. Those are exactly the regions the resistance training protected. 2 to 3% of volume that the control group lost, and the training group did not. And notice what was actually measured here. Not a memory questionnaire. Not how sharp people said they felt. Volume, in named subregions, on repeat scans. That is about as hard as evidence gets in this field. And here is the part one keep coming back to. The training stopped at 6 months. The protection was still visible at 18, a year after the last set. That is not how we normally think about training. You stop lifting, you lose the muscle. Here, 6 months of work bought a year of structural protection in the part of the brain that Alzheimer's reaches first. Caveat, and it is a real one. These were people with mild cognitive impairment. A brain that is already losing tissue has room to be protected. We do not know what 6 months of lifting does to a healthy 35-year-old, because you cannot detect protection against a loss that is not happening yet. Number 6. The biggest number on the list, which is exactly why I have to be the most careful with it. 466,788 people. Median age 56. Followed for about 9 years. In that time, 4,087 of them developed dementia. And what the researchers had, for every single one of those people, was a grip strength measurement. A hand dynamometer. You squeeze, it reads a number in kilograms. It takes 10 seconds, and it is the cheapest proxy we have for whole body strength. Nobody in that study was asked how often they went to the gym. They were asked to squeeze. The people in the weakest fifth had 72% higher risk of developing dementia than the people in the strongest fifth, and 87% higher risk of dying from it. Put it in time. The weakest fifth reached the same level of risk 3 years earlier than the strongest fifth. And then the number that made me stop. 30.1% of dementia cases in that cohort were attributable to low grip strength. Now stop. Here is what that does not mean. It does not mean that squeezing a dynamometer harder prevents dementia. It does not mean that if everybody got stronger, dementia would fall by 30%. This is an observational study. Nobody randomized anyone to be weak. There is an obvious alternative explanation, and it is called reverse causation. Dementia begins in the brain years, possibly decades, before it is diagnosed. A brain that is quietly failing may produce a weaker grip long before it produces forgetfulness. In that story, weak grip is not the cause. It is an early symptom. So why show you the number at all? Because of the size, and because it survives adjustment. 466,000 people is enough that this is not noise, and the association holds after the researchers account for the obvious confounders. That does not make it causal. It makes it worth taking seriously. And there is one more thing in its favor, which is that it points the same direction as the 5 randomized findings before it. A correlation that agrees with the trials is worth more than a correlation standing on its own. And because of what it costs you to act on it. If grip strength is a cause, lifting helps. If grip strength is only a marker, lifting still gets you the 5 things I already showed you. And those were randomized trials, not correlations. The downside of being wrong here is that you did some resistance training for no reason. So, 6 things. Focus. 1 session a week, 12 months. Measurably better at overriding an automatic response. Sleep. A sleep faster, more deep sleep, though I will not give you a number. Anxiety. A moderate reduction, and the biggest effect in the people who are not diagnosed. Mood. The largest and most robust effect on this list, and it did not require you to get stronger. The hippocampus. 6 months of training, protection still visible a year after stopping. Dementia risk. The biggest number, and the one I trust least, and I told you why. If you want the dose that most of these trials actually used, 2 sessions a week, progressive load. And the part you should not skip is the word progressive. Almost none of these were bodyweight circuits. They loaded people, and they increased the load. Every study is linked in the description with its PubMed identifier, so you can check whether I represented it fairly. Please do. And if number 4 is the reason you are still here, the one that worked whether or not you got stronger, that is the one I would build a habit around. You cannot control whether your bench goes up. You can control whether you show up. And if this was useful, hit like. Not for me. The like is what decides whether the next person gets shown it at all.